It always begins so quietly, with ordinary moments in small towns, roads where the sound of tires on gravel and the breeze cutting across the fields seemed like the only dangers worth noting. These were places where girls walked home from school, where teenagers dared to hitch rides along stretches of rural Connecticut and neighboring states, where nothing appeared threatening except the shadows lengthening at dusk. Yet, hidden in plain sight, a man was hunting, watching, waiting for one of those moments when someone's trust in their surroundings would falter, and he would make his move. His intelligence was extraordinary. With an IQ range of more than 155 points, his demeanor unassuming, the kind of man who blended into the background. But his urges were something else entirely. Dark compulsions that left bodies abandoned in woods and fields, stripped of dignity and discarded like refuse. His crimes would span years, his methods brutal and chilling, his control absolute. A New York journalist once made a comment about him, saying, "If I was walking up a very dark alleyway at night and I heard footsteps behind me and looked around and saw him, I'd be relieved." That is exactly how poker-faced and unreadable he was. To understand how such a man came to be known as the Roadside Strangler, we must track back to the quiet facade of his beginnings. Welcome to CrimeScope USA. Before we get into the video, do smash that like and subscribe button to help the channel. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell so as not to miss any new videos from us. Michael Bruce Ross was born in Brooklyn in 1959 on a local farm and peace-loving neighborhood. But his childhood was anything but peace-loving. His father was emotionally distant, and his mother volatile and cruel, an environment that cracked something inside him early. He would sometimes transfer all that rage and pent-up aggression onto the livestock in the farm, occasionally pulling and twisting the life out of the necks of almost all the chickens they had left. And when he was an adolescent, Ross already begun developing deviant sexual fantasies focused on violence against women. At Cornell University, where he studied economics and was considered brilliant by his peers, he was simultaneously feeding those urges, secretly stalking women and honing his ability to isolate and dominate them. He seemed like the least likely candidate for suspicion, a soft-spoken man with an IQ of 155 who was supposed to be destined for success. But when darkness festers unchecked, intelligence can be turned into something weaponized. His first known victim was Zung Nok Tu, a 25-year-old fellow Cornell student in 1981. She was walking alone when Ross, walking close behind her, instantly attacked her, strangling her to death instantly. Her murder shocked the campus community, yet Ross walked around freely, unsuspected, even as whispers of a killer circulated. Emboldened, he continued. Between 1981 and 1984, Ross kidnapped and murdered at least 8 young women, mostly teenagers, whom he targeted at random along roadsides or quiet trails. His method was nearly always the same. He would approach, sometimes offering a ride, sometimes ambushing outrightly. He bound them, sexually assaulted them, and strangled them with chilling calm. Afterwards, he disposed of their bodies in secluded areas, showing little regard for whether they would ever be found. Each victim was treated as if she were nothing more than an object for him to exert his control over. And yet he maintained the mask of normalcy, a predator disguised as an ordinary man.
The brutality escalated with each crime. In June 1982, he murdered a minor, snatched as she walked along a road in Brooklyn, Connecticut. In November of that same year, he abducted another minor, sexually assaulted and strangled her, leaving her in the woods. Ross stalked and killed yet another minor in March 1983. These were not calculated revenge killings nor crimes of passion. They were, in Ross's own words, compulsions, urges he could no longer control, urges that demanded victims regardless of innocence. His confession revealed the terrifying reality. He murdered not because of who they were, but because they were right there, within reach.
Police began to notice a pattern, a predator focusing on vulnerable young women traveling alone. But it wasn't until 1984, after the disappearance of 14-year-old Wendy Baribeau, that the net began to close in. Wendy was last seen walking to visit a friend, and when she never arrived, the community was shaken. Her body was later found in a nearby wooded area, and the investigation quickly intensified. Suspicion soon turned toward Ross. His familiarity with the surroundings, his unsettling behavior, and mounting evidence pulled him into the center of the scene. When he was finally apprehended, he voluntarily confessed to her disappearance with a chilling sense of detachment, explaining how he was driven by compulsions he claims he could not control. In court, the full scope of his crimes were revealed. Ross admitted to 8 killings, though investigators long suspected there may have been much more than that. He described how he stalked his victims and exerted control over them before ending their lives. His intelligence had allowed him to evade capture for years, but his own compulsions eventually betrayed him. The trial stunned the public. How could a man with such promise, such extraordinary ability, transform into a predator who preyed on vulnerable young women? The courtroom was filled with the anguished families of his victims, each testimony a reminder of lives cut short, of futures erased by his need for domination.
Michael Ross was sentenced to death, and unlike many on death row, he embraced his punishment. Over the years, he expressed remorse, even attempting to waive his appeals, insisting he deserved to die for what he had done. His case dragged on through the legal system, with activists protesting the death penalty and legal teams battling over whether he was fit to be executed. But Ross remained steadfast. On May 13, 2005, after decades of terror and years of appeals, Michael Bruce Ross was executed by lethal injection, the first person put to death in Connecticut in over 40 years. His final words purportedly expressed sorrow for his victims and their families, but no apology could undo the horror of what he had inflicted. The case of Michael Bruce Ross remains chilling, not only for the sheer brutality of his actions, but also for the contradiction he embodied. A man of extraordinary intelligence who would have most likely built a future of achievement instead used his gifts to stalk, assault, and kill. He proved that evil does not always appear as the unhinged or the grotesque. It can wear glasses, carry a briefcase, and seem like any other man walking down the street. For the families of his victims, closure never truly came. Their daughters, sisters, and friends were stolen in the most horrific way, discarded along the very roads they once trusted. So the question remains, how many other men like Michael Bruce Ross walk among us, hidden behind masks of normalcy, blending into the crowd, brilliant and outwardly harmless, but driven by dark compulsions the rest of the world cannot see? And do you believe Ross truly acted alone in all of his crimes? Or could others have known, perhaps even helped, in ways yet undiscovered? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like the video if you want more of these deep dives into America's darkest cases.